Cubaan suara 1, 2, 3. Cubaan suara. Mengumumkan ketibaan yang berbahagia Profesor Tan Sri Dr. Jemilah Mahmood, Pengarah Eksekutif Sunway Center for Planetary Health, Sunway Universiti Malaysia, diiringi div-div kehormat. Nyanyian Negara Putra Akademia.
Putra Malaysia, pembina wawasan gemilang. Universiti Putra Malaysia, membantu siswa cemerlang. Semara namamu di sinar zaman, semerbak namamu di suara gandulan. Penyumbang bakti kerana bangsa, pewaris sejati negara tercinta. Tidak ada bangsa di dalam negara, bersurat dan sambung rencana kemajuan.
Hadirin dipersilakan duduk. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera dan salam Malaysia Madani. Yang berbahagia Profesor Tan Sri Dr. Jemilah Mahmood, Pengarah Eksekutif Sunway Center for Planetary Health, Sunway University Malaysia. Yang berbahagia Profesor Insinyur Dr. Rahim Abu Talib, Timbalan Naib Canselor, Akademik dan Antarabangsa. Yang berusaha Profesor Madya Teknologis Dr. Wan Zuhaini Saad, Pengarah Pusat Pembangunan dan Kecemerlangan Kepemimpinan Akademik CADe-Lead. Yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Jemilah Abu, Presiden Persatuan Pegawai Akademik UPM, Pegawai-pegawai kanan Universiti, seterusnya hadirin yang dikasihi sekalian. Selamat datang ke Majlis Syarahan Umum Rashdan Baba Siri ke-7 dan Majlis Penutup Bulan Akademia Putra UPM 2025. Sidang hadirin sekalian, bagi memohon berkat majlis pada hari ini, majlis dengan segala hormatnya menjemput Al-Fadhil Ustaz Muhammad Haikal bin Rosli dari Pusat Islam Universiti Putra Malaysia untuk memimpin bacaan doa. Dengan segala hormatnya, dipersilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Kita mulakan dengan berkat surah Al-Fatihah. Al-Fatihah. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Arrahmanirrahim. Maliki yaumiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Ya Allah, ya Tuhan kami, Tuhan yang Maha Pengasih lagi Maha Penyayang, kami berhimpun pada petang yang penuh barakah ini dalam program Syarahan Umum Rashdan Baba Siri ke-7 dan Majlis Penutup Bulan Akademia Putra 2025. Ya Allah, kami panjatkan kesyukuran atas limpah rahmat dan inayah-Mu yang mengizinkan kami berkumpul dalam suasana penuh harmoni bagi menimba ilmu, menambah wawasan dan memperkukuh ukhuwah sesama warga Universiti Putra Malaysia. Ya Allah, berkatilah majlis yang kami adakan ini. Jadikanlah segala ilmu dan perkongsian yang disampaikan sebagai panduan yang membawa manfaat kepada universiti, agama, bangsa dan negara. Kurniakanlah kepada kami hati yang tenang, fikiran yang tajam dan semangat juang yang tinggi untuk terus berbakti dalam bidang ilmu dan kepemimpinan akademik. Ya Allah, Tuhan yang mengetahui, suburkanlah budaya keilmuan dan kecemerlangan di universiti kami ini. Lindungilah para ilmuwan, pensyarah, penyelidik serta seluruh warga akademia daripada sebarang kelemahan dan kesilapan. Tunjukkanlah kepada kami jalan yang lurus dan hindarilah kami daripada segala kealpaan dan kezaliman. Ya Allah, jadikanlah segala usaha kami sebagai amal yang diberkati dan diterima di sisi-Mu. Satukanlah hati-hati kami dalam kebaikan, permudahkanlah segala urusan kami dan berilah kejayaan kepada Universiti Putra Malaysia untuk terus unggul di pesada ilmu dan kemanusiaan. Rabbana taqabbal minna innaka antas samiul alim wa tub alaina innaka antat tawwabur rahim. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azaban nar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Amin, amin, amin ya Rabbal Alamin. Majlis merakamkan ucapan terima kasih kepada Al-Fadhil Ustaz Muhammad Haikal bin Rosli atas bacaan doa sebentar tadi. Untuk makluman hadirin sekalian, Syarahan Umum Rashdan Baba UPM merupakan salah satu program latihan transformasi kepemimpinan akademik yang dianjurkan oleh Pusat Pembangunan dan Kecemerlangan Kepemimpinan Akademik CADe-Lead. Program ini bertujuan untuk memantapkan keterampilan pegawai akademik di UPM melalui siri perkongsian kepakaran dan pengalaman oleh tokoh-tokoh tersohor negara di samping memberi pendedahan serta pengetahuan kepada seluruh warga universiti dalam melahirkan warga universiti yang berilmu serta menyumbang kepada kemakmuran masyarakat sejagat. Pada hari ini juga kita akan turut meraihkan Majlis Penutup Bulan Akademia Putra UPM 2025. Bulan Akademia Putra merupakan wadah tahunan Universiti Putra Malaysia bagi meraihkan peranan, sumbangan dan pencapaian warga akademia dalam mengangkat martabat ilmu. Tema yang diangkat pada tahun ini adalah Akademia Dinamik Memacu Inovasi Lestari yang mencerminkan aspirasi UPM untuk terus melahirkan akademia yang berdaya saing, menginspirasi masyarakat dengan ilmu serta mendukung pembangunan lestari melalui pendidikan, penyelidikan dan inovasi. Sepanjang Bulan Akademia Putra 2025 ini, pelbagai program telah dijalankan termasuk syarahan tokoh terkemuka, audio siar, pertandingan dan perkongsian ilmu yang bukan sahaja menyemarakkan budaya keilmuan tetapi juga menzahirkan komitmen UPM sebagai menara ilmu yang berteraskan semangat berilmu berbakti. Sebelum kita ke sesi syarahan umum, izinkan saya memperkenalkan penceramah jemputan pada hari ini. Yang berbahagia, Profesor Tan Sri Dr. Jemilah Mahmood merupakan seorang profesional perubatan dengan lebih 2 dekad pengalaman dalam menguruskan krisis berkaitan kesihatan, bencana dan konflik. Beliau kini merupakan profesor dan pengarah eksekutif Sunway Center for Planetary Health di Universiti Sunway, Malaysia. Beliau juga merupakan ahli Global Future Council on Clean Air, World Economic Forum dan pernah menjadi pengerusi bersama Climate and Health Steering Group. Antara peranan lain yang disandang beliau termasuk ahli lembaga bagi Roche, Climate Action Accelerator, Planetary Health Alliance di peringkat global serta Kumpulan Wang Simpanan Pekerja KWSP. Beliau juga merupakan penasihat kelestarian kepada Air Asia. Sebelum ini, beliau pernah berkhidmat sebagai penasihat khas kesihatan awam kepada Perdana Menteri Malaysia semasa pandemik COVID-19. Beliau turut memegang pelbagai jawatan kepimpinan dalam organisasi antarabangsa, termasuk sebagai Ketua World Humanitarian Summit di Pertubuhan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu PBB dan Timbalan Setiausaha Agung International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies IFRC. Beliau juga merupakan pengasas Mercy Malaysia, sebuah organisasi kemanusiaan terkemuka Global South. Atas sumbangan luar biasa beliau dalam bidang kemanusiaan dan kesihatan awam, beliau telah menerima pelbagai pengiktirafan berprestij termasuk Anugerah Merdeka 2015 dan ASEAN Prize 2019. Dengan segala pencapaian cemerlang ini, majlis dengan ini berbesar hati menjemput Yang Berbahagia Profesor Tan Sri Dr. Jemilah Mahmood untuk menyampaikan syarahan beliau yang bertajuk Educating for Tomorrow, Building a Just and Healthy Planet Across Generations. Dipersilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya sebenarnya rasa terharu nak bagi syarahan ini kerana Tan Sri Rashdan Baba adalah seorang yang saya amat hormati dan kasihi. Let me tell you the story. And I'll continue in English because I know some people here prefer English. Before I even met Tan Sri Rashdan Baba, I knew of Tan Sri Rashdan Baba. My late mother, who became widowed very young, used to tell me about the very gentle professor who supported her business as she had a travel agent at the time. And he would travel through her travel agent. And I would hear stories about how kind and how gentle he was. Little did I know, many years later, I would actually know him personally, as I had the immense honor of delivering all his grandchildren, all 4 of them. I actually invited Race to be here. I don't know whether she is, his daughter. But then I knew the soft side of Tan Sri Rashdan Baba, the grandfather, the loving, doting father that he was, and of course his wonderful wife, Puan Sri. So this is really an honor for me. Thank you, UPM, because the best thing you can do for somebody you admire is to remember and recognize his contributions. I started off as a medical doctor, as you all know, I still am, and I specialized in obstetrics and gynecology. This is how I got to deliver his grandchildren. After delivering about, I would say, 15,000 babies in my lifetime, I think I've done national service already. So I had an aha moment. And as a child, I will tell you that I'm half Chinese and half Malay. So I have a family that is very mixed. Even my mother's siblings did not marry Chinese. So you can imagine it's a bit of a mini UN at home. And but we always grew up respecting each other and respecting diversity and embracing it to its full extent. My parents, my father was a civil servant, a very kind and gentle man. But unfortunately, he died when I was 11. But my mother continued, no education, to become a very successful businesswoman. But what they instilled upon me is the importance of caring for people who have less. We weren't rich when we were young, but we had enough. And the aha moment, I would say my first humanitarian mission was on May 13, 1969. We lived in a mixed community. I was 9 years old. so you can calculate how old I am now. But we had neighbors who were either widows or also may orang bujang yang share a house. So my parents would pack food into small packages, and because I was the youngest in a very large family, my father would lower me into the monsoon drains with a map and tell me to go to different houses to send food. So I think, my training started very young, and that sense of giving back never left me, right, from school and university and so forth. So as I became an obstetrician and gynecologist, first teaching in UKM and then in private practice, I felt I missed something. And that was because, as you know, in our Ministry of Health or Ministry of Education, the minute you take off away to do voluntary work, you drop in your seniority in government, which I think is a real mistake. So of course I turned to my husband, who's sitting in front here, and I told him, why can't we take time out and help people in war zones and so forth? I went on and nagged him the whole day, and then started writing to organizations in Malaysia. And then nobody replied back, right? People probably thought this woman probably unhappy in marriage, wants to go away, right? So my husband then said to me, well, if you want to do this, do it. Because, you're good at organizing things, why don't you do this? The other thing that really upset me all the time is every time you turn on the television, if there's a crisis, normally you always see a white face helping somebody who's brown. And I said, what's wrong with us? We are intellectuals in Malaysia, we are kind people, we always care about others. Why aren't we showing, especially for me, a Muslim woman, that I can actually do a lot of good in the international field? So that was really a bit of my kiasuness, and also the fact that I felt the Global South had a lot to offer, and enough of this colonization by the West. So that was, some of the driving factors that I became a humanitarian. And I started Mercy Malaysia in 1999. In the year 2000, a terrible flood happened in Mozambique. And I have vivid memories because it was on television all the time. As you know, CNN shows over and over again a woman giving birth on a tree and holding on to her baby, and the South African helicopters coming to pick her up. And that lived with me, as a doctor who delivers babies in the comfort of a delivery room. It's not the easiest thing to do, even in the best circumstances. But here was a mother, her love for her child, the tenacity of motherhood, holding on to her baby. I don't know how she delivered the baby on the tree and survived. That was 2000. And around 2000 and I would say late 2000, maybe 17, 18, an article appeared in the Gulf newspaper. Sometimes you fly and you sort of see a newspaper. It was this photograph. Her name is Rosita Mbwanga. It was the little girl who was born in the tree, who aspired to be an engineer. I wish she came to UPM. But it's the story about her, right? And not only was the mother having to give birth on a tree, she was a victim of domestic abuse, and how she fought for divorce from her husband, abusive husband, and brought up her child. So it's a real story again of tenacity. So this lived with me, right? And then in the year 2019, I went to Mozambique. I was bringing donors, and the lady on my left is Rita French. She's the ambassador for human rights, and British ambassador for human rights. And we went to see a project that the UK had funded, other donors had funded as well. And part of the project was actually building a maternal child health center and giving services, not building, but offering services to women and children. And I just kind of joked with the midwife. And I said, oh, it's so good to come to Mozambique. I only read about it in the papers. And by the way, this story is in my head about this woman who gave birth on a tree in 2000, 19 years later. And she pointed me to a little boy. And she said, "Doctor, that boy's mother just gave birth on a tree in the last flood." So I sat down for a moment and I reflected all this and I said, "Oh my God, I've been putting Band-Aid on gaping wounds. It's not enough to respond. We need to look at underlying drivers of why we have these severe climate events, why women are still suffering despite, all the modernity that we are exposed to in Malaysia and the rest of the world. That there are people really, really left behind." So this was 2019. It was around November. And then, as you know, the next thing happened was COVID. Again, a systemic failure, a zoonotic leak, where we haven't taken things very seriously. Even as health professionals, we don't talk to vets enough, right? We don't respect the other professions that actually contribute to health, because 80% of the determinants of health are outside the health sector. So I decided that I would devote the rest of my life now to systems work, to really looking at how do we connect the world that we live in, the crisis that we face, and the health of human civilization and the future. And this is how planetary health came into my life, because it was introduced in 2015 through a Lancet commission funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, because many doctors and scientists like me felt it was not good enough to look at public health or One Health. We have to look at systems. And planetary health is really about transdisciplinary, transboundary, serious coordination, science and humanities, to look at the serious challenges we face in the world today, and what are the solutions then that needs to come in. So really it's about the health of human civilization cannot thrive without a healthy planet. So let's take a step back and look at the world that we know today. If you look at you can get all this data on our World in Data, which is one of the fun websites that we like. And if you represent the world as 100 people in the last 20 centuries, we have done well, right? We have reduced poverty, as you can see here. We have, improved basic education. We have better literacy in many parts of the world. Democracy, comme ci, comme ça. Some areas I think we do well, some maybe less democratic, but generally better compared to the 1950s. You can see vaccination rates are higher now. People have protection. Child mortality has dropped. And if you look at indicators that are critical for development, these are some of the indicators. So generally, we have done well. And we look at, here's another representation. Our life expectancy is also on the rise. And in Malaysia as well, right? Women live a bit longer than men, but we are now looking at 74 years as compared to previously probably in the 50s or 60s. It's now no longer impossible to live beyond 100, right? And we have a new problem with that because we are an aging society. So if you look on the left side, those are all the positives, inverted commas, that I mentioned. But in order for us to support that high population, and 70% by 2050 will be in urban settings, we need to have more water, more power, more food, and more everything. Which means, if you look at the right side, there's a lot of pressure on Earth systems. We need to, therefore, produce more CO2 as we need more fuel and more energy. We will produce more methane, ocean acidification will worsen, and you can see in being UPM, aquaculture will be also impacted, and also nitrogen to coastal zones. So the good and the bad, there's always two sides. So basically, we have developed in a way that did not take into account the planet's health. And there must be a better way to develop, right? So if you look at the impact of that, the latest report just released recently was just from air pollution. We have 7.9 million deaths, premature deaths. We will have 40% of the world population may be facing severe water scarcity. The soil composition is deteriorating. We will not be able to grow food. Biodiversity loss will threaten our humanity. And also, we have changed the Earth's landscape, and we're going to cause more and more degradation of nature. We live in a very uncertain world. This is one of the best UNDP Human Development reports I would like to point you to. And it's a recent one, the last HDR, probably about 4 years old. And it talks about an uncertainty complex that's emerging. Every day we have uncertainties, whether the traffic is going to be bad, whether road closures are going to happen. But there are also uncertainties like the dangerous planetary change of the Anthropocene, the human behaviors that have changed the world. And I think this is already showing, we're seeing the impact of this every day. Secondly, the pursuit of sweeping societal transformations. We see this. All the conflicts that we're facing today, polarization is the third, where we are becoming more and more of us and the other than ever before, not just at global level, but also at national level as well. Now, this uncertainty complex means we have to navigate uncertainty in ways that probably we haven't navigated before. Added to that, there is a World Economic Forum Global Risk Report. It comes out every year in January, and it measures the short-term risks on the left and the longer-term risks on the right. And the short-term risks, for the first time, has actually got armed conflict in it, right? And also misinformation and disinformation being the highest risk in short term. And you and I know this, right? Cyber troopers, you know, during the pandemic, we had to deal with all sorts of misinformation. Drugs that are for horses are supposed to be good for humans now, you know, which is not true. And then the long term, you will see everything in green is related to nature, related to what I mentioned before, that if you don't have a healthy planet, you cannot have healthy people. So we now face what we call a triple planetary crisis. We have the crisis of pollution that I mentioned, we have the crisis of biodiversity loss, and also climate change. And climate change is the threat multiplier. Everything becomes worse because of climate change. And you'll see that all the emissions, the sources of emissions, you'll see contamination by pollution, and also habitat disturbances. When I talk about pollution, people think it's just your chest that's going to be impacted. No. Early onset of Alzheimer's, infertility, strokes, hypertension, diabetes, you name it, right? All the non-communicable diseases as well. So we're really in trouble today. So if you are a doctor, a PhD, or a medical doctor looking at the world today and the planet today, you will see all these challenges, right? But I also see huge opportunities, because I think this is why we are in educations of higher learning, because that's where you build the opportunities. So let me introduce to you planetary boundaries. How many of you have heard of planetary boundaries? Let's be honest, come on. Great, which means your homework today is to watch a Netflix documentary called Breaking Boundaries. It's a wonderful documentary you should watch with your family. It's narrated by Sir David Attenborough and Johan Rockström. And what it is essentially is Johan and a group of scientists came together in 2009 when he was at the Stockholm Resilience Center, and he said, what is the operating system for the planet? So if we know that we need to have a safe and healthy planet, so what are those parameters that we can measure that we have a safe operating system? And that's the planetary boundaries. And there are 9 of them. And when he first described it, only 3 were breached. When I started the Planetary Health Center, 6 were breached. No, actually 5, and then 6, and just recently 7, ocean acidification. I don't know about you, but I'm scared. If this is our safe operating system and we're just throwing it away, we're asking for trouble, big trouble, right? So what do we now do because we are in this situation? And the latest one is ocean acidification. So just to give you an example, some of them include land system change, which you're familiar with, deforestation and so forth, mass monoculture, temperature rise that creates, a shrinkage of the ice sheets. People always tell me, but why is ice so important, so far away? I said, because the sea level rises, there are different things that happen, and it does cause something called tipping points, where you get differences in currents, and therefore you get more storms in one area, changes in weather and so forth. We also have, for example, the issues around aerosol loading, ozone. Now, ozone, believe it or not, is improving. And why do you think that's so? Because of people like you, scientists, who have, the ones before you, who have advised governments on, you're probably too young, who have advised governments that take this seriously. And protocols, the Montreal protocols, the Rio summit in the 90s. And all of us remember ozone, right? From our studies, this hole that you need to plug. So what happened? Industry adapted. No more fluorocarbons, the aerosols and all the changes we made and banned products that would damage the planet. Lo and behold, we reversed it. So what I'm trying to say, I told you about looking at the planet and its problems, but how do you look at the planet and the opportunities? So I think that there are many things we can still do. But if you map every planetary boundary to the health impact, you will find it. So even, for example, novel entities, we're talking about, say, plastic. I'm sure you're reading about this, right? That we will probably die with a teaspoon of plastic in our brains, right? I always tell people you can make a credit card out of me when I'm dead. But climate change, for example, is not just related to non-communicable diseases, but it's also mental health issues, reproductive issues, nutrition, all the other impacts. And this has been mapped out. This is a paper we wrote in July, and it shows you the linkages. So you can see everything is related to health. So if you don't have a healthy planet, you cannot have healthy humans, healthy animals, and so forth. So what it's showing is, as I mentioned from the outset, the systems that are disrupted, the interconnectedness of our world, and the interconnected crises that we face. These are the interconnected crises as a result of breaching the planetary boundaries that then leads, that are driven by our patterns of consumption. We shop on Shopee like there's no tomorrow, and it comes wrapped in 6 layers of plastic. Have you, as UPM, written to Shopee to say this is bad practice? You've not. I have. But I think we have to think carefully. Amazon changed their packing habits into everything that is degradable, and they choose, you have an option to choose that you want to reduce the carbon footprint by kumpulkan all the shopping and send on one day. Ini every day, the Shopee fella is sending you things, kan, JT, Transport Express, whatever it is. I'm sure you're all experiencing this. Okay, so all these are the shifts. For example, our consumption, demographic shifts, urbanization, technology, agricultural practices, and governance failures. And then the last is probably the most important. If you don't put the right policies in place, and if you don't think climate change and these issues are important, nothing will happen. So what I'm trying to show is the interconnectedness that I mentioned before. You see the underlying, the biosphere integrity. These are the things that I mentioned about systems failure. And then you've got the behaviors here on the left side driving that. So you actually then get impact on people, and you get nutritional diseases, infectious diseases, everything that you can imagine, mental health issues. If you ask young people around the world today, they will tell you they do not want to have children. Malaysia will not reach its replacement rate in 2040. We'll be an aging nation, and there'll be a lot of problems with that. right? So, but it's a tale of two maps. We need to, and I raise this a lot, and a lot of white people don't like me, but the responsibility, look at it. China, US, but look at Malaysia. Per capita, we are terrible. We are terrible polluters. Per capita, we have a small population. We use more plastic than most people. And also our carbon footprint is also very high per capita. But the impact, look at the impact, is the mothers in Mozambique. The people who are living in areas where they cannot anymore grow food. And it also impacts us in the region in Southeast Asia. We will have so many climate events that will actually destroy our crop, that will actually change crop patterns. You know, as you, some of you may have been abroad recently. You know, I was in Europe. It was so hot. It was hotter than KL. And then, you know, farmers are having a major headache. The number one killer in farmers today is what? Anyone? Suicide. Mental health issues are so severe among farmers because they can no longer predict. The rain comes at the wrong time, the sun is a bit too long, the winters are a bit too short, you know, so that the growing patterns are really affected. So this is something about justice that, you know, when we talk about planetary health, it's a justice issue as well. And, you know, I tell people, look at this very seriously, because if you're going to buy property, please don't buy in those areas in red, because it's going to be 3 feet below water, you know, and not too long. So I think we've got to be really not just think it's another person's problem, it's also our problem. It's going to happen to our region as well. Right. And we've experienced this. There are terrible floods going on now around Malaysia. No longer, tu biasa tu, banjir. Biasalah Kelantan, hujung tahun kan, ada flooding, right? But actually, you know what? Other places are even worse. And worse still when it happens in cities, it disrupts business, it disrupts your supply chains and everything else, right? So when the haze hits, just think about it. I looked at the outdoors today, it was very hazy. And you know, everything suffers, right? Productivity suffers, you get sick, children get sick. And sometimes when you think about children falling sick, indoor pollution is worse than outdoor pollution. So when the teachers close the school and send the children home, actually it's worse at home sometimes than in the school, especially for poorer households. You know, we can buy our, you know, LG filtration, whatever, you know, microfilter, but they can't. And they live in very small houses that have no cooling. And heat is a major issue. You know, the heat crisis, particularly hitting the temperate countries, is going to create more and more deaths, particularly around elderly populations. So those of you who were educated abroad or who travel, you will know that apart from US that has the best air conditioning system, everywhere you go, you're blasted with air conditioning. Europe is hopeless. The buildings are built for the cold, and therefore it's very hard to cool down. In Switzerland, you can't even pasang aircon in the house. Not allowed, right? So I think these are major issues, right? So the heat excess, mental health related. When you're hot, you get really, really bothered. That's why it's called hot and bothered. So you don't want to go out, you don't want to do things, you don't want to exercise, and therefore your diabetes and your hypertension, everything gets worse, you become more obese. On top of that, many people don't realize when you're hot, the amount of your metabolism goes up. So psychiatric drugs, for example, are metabolized faster. So you get more manic and, you know, psychotic episodes coming to emergency room because of the heat, right? And I think these are some of the, look at the potential work hours lost because of that. So in Malaysia, we are like this. Because you know what? We think it's okay lah, panas sikit. I can wear a jacket because I know UPM will have aircon, right? So we are frogs in very slowly boiling water. We ignore it. But every 1 degree centigrade rise in temperature affects your body. And you don't realize it till it's a bit too late. And we have deaths from heat strokes. We have more depression and anxiety. And again, as I said, reduced activities. So when we damage the planet, we do damage human health. We do, put ourselves at risk of undernutrition because the crops themselves, the quality of the crop is lowered. Children are now stunted. As you know, in Putrajaya, they did a study as well because of undernutrition. We lose micronutrients. And then on top of that, there are new vectors coming out, right? It's like a sci-fi movie. When the Arctic, ice is melting, it releases so many new old pathogens under the ice. So we have no idea what's coming. And then also the cost to the healthcare as well. The climate burden is extremely high. And if you look at the impact in dollars and cents, because I know there might be economists in this room, you will see that there will be 14.5 million deaths because of climate change, and the economic loss is in the region of $12.5 trillion. So this is very, very high. And if you look at it from heat and floods, if you compare, economic loss due to heat is higher than, very high. In fact, it's the highest. But if you look at deaths from floods, then it is higher among compared to heat. So in Malaysia itself, I mentioned about the costs, but even from 2000, and this study was done around 2016, 2017, I think, and the cost was about 40 billion per year. That's significant. It could be put into research, it could be put in all sorts of things, right? So just to mention again, for those who are interested, this is the original Lancet paper on planetary health. So what planetary health tries to do is get us to think beyond sustainability. Sustainability is to sustain, but planetary health is to regenerate and to actually be resilient, to come out really much stronger than before. And if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, which all of us are committed to, are failing. The global achievement is 18%. All of you are university people. 18% is a fail. And why? It's because everything is siloed. So if I'm the Minister of Health, I only want to look at the health SDG. Whereas I've shown you today, if you don't get your environment right, your health will be impacted. Right? If I'm Minister of Transport, I only want to look at transport. I want to look at certain things. But if you don't look at health, your transportation is going to impact health. So I think how we need to think is to rewire our brain. And this is why the planetary boundaries and planetary health becomes the base of it. Look at those boundaries. How then does it relate to the SDGs? So I come to the role of education. We sit here and I stand here in an incubator of leadership, innovation, and values. And your week has been about leadership and innovation. But values are critical. Young people now can probably get just as much information from the internet than from their professor. But the internet cannot teach them values. Values are nurtured from home. Values are nurtured through faith. And values are nurtured through people like you and me who accompany young people to better understand the complexity of the world and why values matter. So we have a tremendous responsibility. Students are future policymakers, they're future leaders, they're corporate leaders, they're entrepreneurs, they're community leaders, they're also future teachers. And this is why I'm very proud to be involved in this, and I know a number of UPM colleagues are also involved in this. I know particularly for sustainable food, that we now have the first country in the world, please give yourself a pat on the back, Malaysia, a National Planetary Health Action Plan. Our center is only 4 years old, but gosh, I've worked so hard to push. And thank God I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist by training, because we always say push, push. So we just have to keep pushing. But this is now a reality, right? It's a plan. A plan is useless unless it's implemented. But you will see in this plan the underlying principles, humanity-centric values, belas kasihan, compassion, STI-enabled, critical for innovation, nature-based, recognizing the importance of nature, of animals, of plants, values internalized. Again, values. And I think that for us to be able to achieve the SDGs, for us to be able to live in a safe and healthy planet and reset the iOS for our planet, we need to have those 5 key shifts: governance and management of our nation's khazanah, nurturing people to lead a healthy, prosperous, and values-driven nation, again, values, a planet-friendly businesses, doing businesses differently. I know you have a business school here. Effective communication, behavior and values mindset, and sustainable financing and development. Communication is key. As a scientist myself, I always have to watch what I'm saying. Like if you're a doctor and you tell your patient, you have preeclampsia and have no choice but to put you on Trondate 100 milligram 3 times a day so that you may need to have an elective cesarean section. I promise the patient won't come back, right? But if I say to the patient, sorry, you have high blood pressure, we can probably manage it with some medication, which you must take 3 times a day. And it's likely we may have to deliver you earlier. So there may even be a risk of a cesarean section if your blood pressure goes out of control. Scientists are terrible at dejargonizing. Betul tak? We love our technology and our terminologies because we love to write them in the journals and we think people all understand it, but they don't. So how now do we look at communication? So here's research and education at the center. We put it in the center. It's a foundation of everything that we want to do from now on. We all have a job to do this, right? So if you're interested, you can, I'm going to leave this slide so you can have it. I'll just take out some personal ones. So you can have an executive summary, but the plan will be launched, the full plan will be launched on 20th November. So watch this space, yeah? It's led by Academy of Science with Ministry of Science. This is the elephant in the room. There's always an elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room I mentioned is governance, right? And also to an extent, business. When you talk about Petronas, Petronas has brilliantly marketed itself. You remember the Hari Raya advertisement, the little boy on the grandfather's shoulder, Merdeka, Merdeka, right? But look at how much damage Petronas has done, right? I am an embarrassed recipient of the Merdeka Award. In Sudan, he has killed many people with birth defects, a lot of issues. And I think it's not the only one. Shell, Exxon, others. The fossil fuel industry is a dangerous industry. We owe Petronas for bringing Malaysia forward, improving our economy. But just remember, there is a cost to humanity. And this is where I put this up deliberately for us to always realize every bit of development, every hero you think you know, there is a cost. So how do we find the middle ground? So, been telling Petronas, accelerate your renewables. We can't just break the fossil fuel because people need energy. When it's easy for me to say, break the fossil fuel industry, then the pakcik nak pergi, nelayan nak pergi bawa boat dia keluar untuk tangkap ikan, macam mana? He needs diesel. He can't afford an electric boat. So I think we've got to get our narratives right. We have to face the realities, first of all. Don't be an ostrich. And recognize and call out the injustices. This is a human rights violation. But also encourage them to accelerate on the renewables. So the energy experts in this room, the engineers, accelerate. There are more renewables on this planet today than ever before. So it requires strong governance to push for this. Yes, we have a national energy transition roadmap. That's great. We have something to start with. We have to push to make sure it happens. Having a plan does not mean it happens. So we need to just put constant pressure and encouragement to make sure this happens. It's very, very important. This is about, generations. So basically, we need planetary stewardship. Every single one of us in this room. Whether you're Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever faith you have, or if you don't have a faith but you're spiritual, you are always taught to do good, to leave the planet a better place because you lived in it, not a worse place. And I think this is where education plays a very important role, the values that you build in. I think it's really, really important. And you will see here, some pictures about United Nations, because multilateralism is failing, it's breaking apart, right? Because of geopolitical tensions, all the different things that are happening in the world today. But look at the power of innovation. There are more solar panels than ever before. It's cheaper, affordable. There's other forms of renewable energy. People are now greening the cities. If you go to Singapore, you don't have to go far. You feel cooler in some parts of Singapore because they've invested in putting green plants. You go to Korea, they turn into a polluted waterway, which was a 2-story highway, which is causing so much pollution, into a park now, a river park, that all your K-dramas are filmed at, right? So I think what I'm trying to show you is this sense of possibility. And coming back to the National Planetary Health Action Plan and Education, the 9th pillar of the higher education blueprint is sustainability and planetary health. So it will become mandatory in all institutions, which is fantastic. No other country in the world has done this, right? So I think we got to think about these things. So on education itself, I'm trying to show some work that was done by some of the friends in the Planetary Health Alliance, that we actually have developed an educational framework. How do you look at it from a planetary health lens? Urgency and scale, policy, movement building, inequality. So this is basically, when you look at the anthropogenic changes at the planetary scale, how do you bring it down to local, social, economic, cultural, environmental conditions? And I don't take this lightly. Culture matters. Our local context matters. You can have major global frameworks. You need to contextualize, right? And as you look at this, how will education improve lives? What are you going to do tomorrow that's different than you did today? I hope, yeah? How we have to look at how we produce and consume our food. How do we manufacture our products? How do we get better energy? How do we construct and live in our cities that become more livable, more healthy, more resilient? How do you manage our natural landscapes? How do you create a movement, not just among the students, but professors, teachers, and others to say, we want a better planet, we want to have better health? And what are the stories we tell ourselves about our relationship to nature? I'm married to a kampong boy who comes from Sungai Pahang. From the time we got married until now, I still hear about how his grandfather would not allow him to eat, what's the expensive fish that you, as the sultan fish, jalawat, because he said he can sell it for 500 ringgit and buy chicken, and everyone can have. That story is connected to nature. How, when my late grandma-in-law was pregnant, she wanted that bird in the tree. Not any other bird, but that bird. My poor grandfather. Everything was connected to nature. Asha would tell me stories about how he would go to the river every morning to collect water so that his mother could have a hot bath. It's connected to nature. We must bring ourselves back into that environment. For someone like me who grew up in the city, these are nice stories, right? So I every opportunity to enjoy nature, I try. But for those who've lived in nature, they understand that this is part and parcel of life. So I wanted to show the Stacy matrix. I mean, you're all professors and educators, so you probably know. But basically, what approaches, attitudes, and values do you need in these zones of complexity? Because when it's linear, it's easy, right? Close to agreement, close to certainty. Very straightforward, linear relationship. But life is never linear. and very uncertain. So when you look at, as you move out, when you're far from agreement and far from certainty, what do you do? And I think there are some things that we can do. As an educator, we need to now build on these things. We need to be curious. Right? Sometimes people ask me, how come from obstetrician and gynecologist, now you're talking about economics, politics, finance and all that, right? I said, because I'm curious. I want to learn. I always feel I don't know enough. And I love talking to people who are not my discipline. You need to collaborate. Ini gila dengan ranking. Including my university. Ya. Betul tak? Gila dengan ranking. Tak nak ocok. Ni secret ni. Tak nak bagi orang lain tahu sebab kita nak ranking. Whereas the modern world requires us to be collaborative in our research. Transdisciplinary. Which means you have to stop being selfish. And believe me, you and I know this, the more you give, the more it comes back, right? Tolerance for ambiguity. Nothing is certain. You know, sometimes when I talk to some people, especially donors and funders, how sure are you you're going to get this? I always tell them, are you sure you can get home in time when the flood, when the rain comes down? Nothing in life is 100% certain. You have to have tolerance for ambiguity. Systems awareness. We must teach systems thinking. And this is where planetary health education is. Empathy, inclusion, reflection, adaptability, and have a long-term view. Something politicians cannot have. And that's a problem, right? And I tell them very openly, I understand. Your view is 5 years till the next election. But the world does not requires us to have a longer-term orientation. So let the rest, it's not just politics that will determine change in a country, it's us. Other people can do that long-term orientation. It requires the whole of society to come in now, whether you're a policy maker, whether you're an educator, a businessman, and so forth. And it's very important to be able to tell stories where there has been some success. So as I mentioned, we are 4 years old. I push a lot. Pushed the university to pilot planetary health education in 2004. We started in 2001. And 2005 onwards, planetary health and community service is a mandatory subject, MPU, in Sunway. First in the world as well, right? So what we want to do is the alignment of the MPU to Sunway's education strategy, right? So evaluators of planetary health, this is a paper that we wrote, but looking at, you know, how do you build entrepreneurial mindset skills? This is our university kind of mantra. How do you have this community service of planetary health? How do you have integrity? And therefore, you know, build on that to achieve power relations that are stable, governance that is good, prosperity, equity, and health. And then we have this module, it's 2 credit hours. What we do is that there is an online course and tutor guided on planetary health basics, and then they go out to the community for 4 weeks. So we adopted Desa Mentari, which is a PPR. It has every conceivable social problem you can think of. And we get our students to think from their discipline. If I'm an engineer, what do I bring to this community? If I'm a food scientist, what do I bring? If I'm a medical student, what do I bring? If I'm a communications filmmaker, what do I bring? If I'm a mathematician or actuarial scientist, what do I bring, right? And you create and design planetary solutions. So this is the kind of hybrid format that we have, recorded lectures and so forth, but also tutorials and projects. And the good thing, I think, about having a community we can work with, we can measure impact in 5 years' time. So I think we are not short of communities that need help. So find a community within, close to your campus that you can actually also implement. I'm just showing you an example of how it can be done, right? And we have a new medical school, and for our medical school as well, planetary health is founded on a planetary health concept as well. So we want doctors and nurses to be environmentally responsible, socially aware, and economically wise. And what we do is we have the sustainability in medicine. That's 2 credit hours. So we look at all the different parameters of sustainability, How does it apply to medicine? So as I said, gender equality, poverty is all part of health, right? And then what we do, see some of our students here, so they look at, for example, an example of a biological waste disposal, which is important in medicine. For the first time, they say, oh, we didn't realize that as we dispose biological waste, actually there's a lot of impact on the environment and so forth, on poverty, right? And then, so these are just some of the classes that are taught through the medical school. And then we introduce planetary health in medicine. We have climate change as a subject, global pollution, food security. I graduated in 1986. We weren't taught about climate change. And today, only 15% of medical schools around the world are teaching climate change and planetary health. So an invitation to UPM to join us, yeah. And I think very importantly, you will see for those, see, you want your rankings to go up. So, you know, there is interest in reporting. There's lots of papers now on climate change, both in serious journals, but also on social media. And that's very important. Another thing we do, which we invite you also to participate, is we run courses, we run very funny courses, right? Not funny, I mean like not usual. So this is one of them, global health governance as a public service, because young people generally are quite activists. But activism sometimes there's only a limit to what you can achieve. So we teach them diplomacy. We teach them how do you look at a policy? How do you critique a policy? How do you improve a policy? Things that you don't teach in medical school, you don't teach in engineering school. So these are open, they're free intake. And the top student, we take them as a treat. We take them, it's a fantastic opportunity to network and so forth. We take them, I think that's me in the photograph. Okay, that was in Geneva. We take them to the World Health Assembly, for example. We may take them to COP, where we expose them. And the aim is to get young people on every intergovernmental delegation. And we now have close to signing an agreement with NRES, Kementerian Natural Resources, Environment, Sustainability, to train them and to train young people on this. And we want to train trainers, so it doesn't have to be only Sunway. If we train UPM, UKM can take on. So the more universities get involved, the more we can scale up, right? So, so 10 thrusts, the Ministry of Higher Education blueprint, you would have seen, planetary health and sustainability is pillar 9. This is my last slide. So on May 4th, 2024, which is Star Wars Day, in case you don't know. I love Star Wars. My first and only grandson was born, my grandchild. His name is Ryan. As I held him in my arms, I thought about the world that he's going to live in when I'm gone, right? On that day, the temperature in Rajasthan was 54 degrees centigrade. The temperature in Manila was 45 or 46. Singapore was 43, and Kuala Lumpur was 40 degrees. I felt very happy to have my grandson, but I also felt very sad. And inside me, I made a vow that I would do my best to hopefully leave the world a little bit better for him. And on the right is a photograph I just took. We went to Vietnam recently on Deepavali. And at the time, I got news that the 7th planetary boundary was crossed. And the first social tipping point tipped. And that is massive dieback of all warm coral reef. Finding Nemo will be very difficult. The clownfish will be extinct. And as someone who dives and someone who loves nature, I cannot imagine that my future grandchildren will not be able to see what I have seen. Butterflies are losing their color. They will only be brown. Nature is so badly affected, it's hitting back. The Amazon forest is no longer a carbon sink. It has become a carbon emitter. And there are days I just cry because it leaves me so devastated that we have done this to the generations that never had one single reason to cause the damage that we have caused. Make it personal. Because how do we want to be remembered as people? What is our legacy as we leave? How do we meet our Creator when He asks, why did you buy so much on Shopee? I'm not sure that Allah will ask that, but but what I'm trying to say is that, did we think about our consumption when we had enough money to consume? So I think I will leave you on that note, because I always say to people, take out your handphones now. Please take out your handphones and look at the screensaver you have. How many of people have your children on it? Husband or wife? Nature. So every time you feel despair, take a look at your phone screen and think about what you love, to have hope, but also have urgency. So thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Tan Sri, for such an inspiring talk. Can we open? We have about 10 minutes to hold a Q&A session. So to those who have any questions, please raise up your hand. We'll have our Urusatia. We'll bring the microphone to you.
I'm going to apologize. The very nice gentleman actually left me a list of salutations. I'm so sorry I didn't do that. But, I think we are among friends here, yeah? There's no bad question.
Thank you, Prof, for a very inspiring speech just now. I feel that I really small in this world, but currently I'm fighting for my own stand on sustainability, not only in teaching, but on myself, looking on the world. Maybe it's a very small effort from me to contribute back to the nature. And during that time, I still do what I want to do so that I can achieve that goal. So I apply on my work, I apply on my daily communities work. But may you can suggest to me maybe, because I would like to hear from you, because you are very, 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 very widely open on your own perspective on this world. How can I go far with this kind of stand? Because all this while is coming from my own point of view. This is what I'm going to do with my students, and I think I cannot go far. So what is your advice for that?
My first advice is never underestimate the amount of what you achieve by just individual action. If you are doing one thing and everyone else is inspired by you to do the same thing, you already create a ripple effect. And for change to happen, there is a tipping point, right? If you 5% of people need to bring 15%. 15% of people bring 35%. 35% of people bring 50%. Once you cross 50%, the tipping point happens. Change is always possible, right? I'll give you an example. I walked in, sometimes I need to auditor. No? I walk in, I see, what do you give as water? So when I saw this, I smiled, right? So I like, okay. Do you see how much plastic you've reduced, right? At Sunway, you cannot find plastic water bottle. None. Students have to bring their own containers. They have to refill at water stations. But you can provide your water station, kan? And I'll give you one story, right? So the cafeteria, not cafeteria, there's a very nice cafe close to my office on the campus. And we have a no plastic policy because of us now. We push and push, right? And so when you take the coffee, ke latte, ke whatever you buy, they give you a paper cup. It's still not 100% plastic free, right? But they tell you, and there was a poster on it that says, we apologize, but due to Sunway's no plastic policy, we are unable to give you the plastic lid. So you take your water without the lid, okay? So of course I took a photograph, I went to the president's office. This is wrong messaging. So I drafted the message and I said, change, tell the vendors to change. Now it reads, we are delighted to support Sunway's policy on no plastic, and therefore we welcome you to join us in refusing plastic lids or something like that. Do you see how communication matters? So turning a real problem into a real opportunity. So don't underestimate it. I like a steak once in a while, but since I started this work, I felt I can no longer eat meat the way that I used to eat. So what I do is I find substitutes. I make the best rendang nangka. You raya, you minta I. And normally when we put it out, it goes before the meat, habis, because no one believes how delicious it is, right? Our traditional practices of daun pisang, ketupat, you know, all the daun-daun that we use. We grow our own food. We are lucky to have enough compound. We have ducks that give us eggs. You know, we have fish, but we don't eat because we know them very well. So we can't eat. So if you want tilapia and all that, please come to my house. But you cannot take the, apa yang mahal you kata tak boleh makan? No. What is it that we have in the house? Kelah, yeah. Asha will be very upset if you fish the kelah. But we have tilapia at least. So we do it not because, well, number one, because vegetables that you grow taste so different. Number two, we can give away to people that we love, our friends and family. And number three, we're trying to change our lifestyle. We have an electric car. We try, you know, I fail very badly in not getting to work on public transport because if I do, it takes me 2 hours, so it's too long. But, you know, little things that you do, right? I love fashion, but I have to curb myself. So what I do now is I go to thrift stores when I buy things. You know, when I go overseas, I go to the Oxfam shop or something. You know, not only am I helping somebody, I get something nice. At least it settles my craving for something new. But it's something new that's been used before. UPM, you can have a bazaar where you have students exchanging clothing. You know, I would love to bring some of my clothing to here for people to have good clothing, suits and so forth that I no longer use. I mean, small things matter because, you know, never underestimate what one person's activities are. But most importantly is educate. Educate your children, educate your family, educate, you know, your students, educate other universities. Compete on these things. Right? Compete on good things. Compete on say, hey, your university still use plastic. So old school. Right? I mean, make people who do these bad practices look really bad. Or feel really bad. Yeah? So don't underestimate how you can change. You know, see, it's amazing how much can be done. Anything else? By the way, the planetary health diet is now a flexitarian diet. It used to be vegetarian, but now it's flexitarian, which means more vegetables, meat occasionally, rarely, fish sometimes, and chicken sometimes. So you can still eat. Yeah, sorry, we had some hands up. Yes,
Hi,
please.
thank you very much for the inspiring talk. I'm Dr. Chen from the Faculty of Science. So actually my question is, China managed to reverse side effects of development such as air pollution. Switzerland itself, they encourage their people to leave a minimal carbon footprint.
Yes.
Yeah. So does Malaysia or the related agencies look into the approaches made by these countries?
Okay. I'm gonna break your bubble on China a little bit. Do you know why China was so aggressive on electrification of vehicles and reducing pollution? What was the main factor? Anyone? they lost face during Beijing Olympics. I'm half Chinese, I know. My mother said, don't make me lose face, right? Right? Because all the reports that came out was how polluted Beijing was. Remember? You were probably very young then. But, you know, they had to shut down factories for 2 weeks before the Olympics to clear the air. So you see how emotion is so important in communications, right? So they electrify. And you go to China now, I mean, the air is clean, the sky is blue. So they have ramped up electrification, solar panels and so forth, which is amazing. But don't forget, they are still the largest coal producer. But China is, I think, doing what is my mantra now. I used to be very, very like break the fossil fuels. But my mantra now is build and break. So I think they're building the capacity for renewables and then break the fossil fuel influence. But you have to reduce the fossil fuel influence now, but you don't break it immediately. You build the capacity for renewables first. So I think that's number one. What has Malaysia done, right? Before that, I didn't talk about law. Is there a law school here? No, okay. Law is a powerful, positive tipping point. You would have seen that the International Criminal Court of Justice, ICJ, which is the highest level court in The Hague, came out with an advisory that states are responsible for their people's health and welfare and impact of climate change. This is a very powerful statement. I wrote the health advisory for that. Switzerland, a group of senior citizens took the Swiss government to court for a very hot heat wave in summer. This Makcik went to court and said, we're going to take you to court. We're going to sue you, Swiss government, because you didn't take enough action on climate change. So at the moment, it's still very local. But for Malaysia, it's in our NETA, it's in our RMK 13, you know, and all these things, but it's still not mandatory. But where we have probably positive action is around incentives. Well, how do you create incentives and disincentives for decarbonization, right? So you have an electric car, you tak bayar road tax macam biasa. You know, your businesses, if you are not, this is another thing about regulation, more and more stringent regulation. So if your business is an emitter, they will tax you. Now, Singapore is very, very strong on this carbon tax they've introduced. But not only that, and I don't know why Malaysia doesn't do this. The Ministry of Health, or Sing Health, has a tie-up with supermarket and all that. And on your phone, you can actually measure your steps. The more steps you get, the more points you can get coupons. You know, you can go up to 1,000 Sing a month in coupons to buy food and from supermarket and all that. And Singapore now, they also give you information at the supermarket. When you're buying something, they might be able to tell you, would you like to consider something else? A product that has probably got lower carbon footprint and all that. So this is all about education and making market-driven changes, right? So I think it's possible to do that. Are we running out of time? We sure? Yeah. Yes, gentleman in red.
Hi, good afternoon, Canselori, and I'm Rahim from Faculty of Food Science and Technology. And I agreed with you the deliciousness of rendang nangka, right?
Yes.
I've been cooking it for years.
Yes, yes.
And when I cook it so delicious.
Yeah.
But anyway, I have questions related to how ready or what is your imagination or your forecast of future classroom in the next like 10 to 20 years. Maybe we're not going to be there, but what do you think, and how are you going to be prepared for this, for the future classroom? Thank you.
Okay, I think the future classroom is going to be very digital. I think that's no doubt. It's going to be very digital. And I want to mention one thing here. AI seems to be the solution to everything. When you talk to people in government or policies, everything, oh, AI will fix this. AI can't fix values, right? But and the other thing that people don't realize, AI has a very high carbon footprint. And people are not talking about it enough. So we're working in our center on pro-social AI. And we are, we've been talking to the National AI Office as well to say in your National AI plan, you need to reflect X, Y, and Z. So it's being deliberated in Parliament, in the Majlis Penutup 3. So I'm hoping to see whether they have taken some of our advice. I think it will be more digital. I would love to see it be more experiential. I would love us to bring nature into the classroom, right? I think that if I'm younger, so those of you much younger than me, please think this is a business idea. You should start having forest schools. In Switzerland, my little sort of humanitarian godson, his name is Leo, he goes to a forest school. There's no jungle, forest school. So his mother drops him at a certain point, and the teacher picks him up, and they take a train and they go to the forest. So their classroom is in a forest, come rain, come wind, come winter or snow. And so when he walks around in Geneva, he will tell the mother, you know this tree? And he's only about 9 now, 9 or 10. He's been there since he was 4. He will tell the mother the species of the tree, why it's so important to protect the tree. He's very conscious. If he sees litter, he picks it up. So these are values. But at the same time, he's learning maths and science and English and everything else. So I think the future of education has to be, in my opinion, experiential, for it to be fun and create those value systems that I mentioned about. I think the future of education will skew towards our survival in the future. So sustainability, planetary health, and how education must be centered around that. Well, maybe this is my wishful thinking at least, but I think we have no choice. People are realizing this. The climate report just came out, and the Lancet countdown just came out. We have failed at every level. It's a very scary report. I'll send it to UPM. You can share it with everyone. Yes, saya.
Sorry, that's okay. Thank you again for the very inspiring. I think everybody is inspired, right? Yeah. And you show your photo of your grandson. I have my photos of my grandchildren on my screen. You see, when Dr. Mastura was asking about her stance and how, and you said not to underestimate, and you mentioned about ripple effect and everything, and pushing, I think we have been pushing our UPM in terms of the global sustainability agenda. And for your information, we have integrated the 8 key competencies of sustainability explicitly into our curriculum. And if you look at from the slide that you show, you have the 12 principles of the planetary health education. Which do you think that will be the priority that we want to, for us to look into, deep dive, and especially in the Malaysian context or even UPM? And I think whether instead of ripple effect, do you think that we need a tsunami? Thank you.
Very good question. Let me go back to that so that everyone is refreshed. Sorry, it's taking a bit of time. Oh, what's happening? Oh. I don't know. Anyway, you will see that it has planetary health lens, it has values, it has other things. I think it's about creating this systems thinking. For me, that's number one priority. How do we teach our students that when you look at a problem, don't look at it as one problem. Try to map out the different systems that connect to that particular problem. And I think that's a real skill you need to teach. The second, and I go back to this, I think it's values. Because, I always say that values need to be taught at home, by school. I started off telling you my very personal story about my parents instilling values. But today we have a challenge that because everyone is in urban settings, the cost of living is high. And therefore you have parents, both parents working. And sometimes there's lack of attention to the child's. When you come home, you're tired. And I experience it even with my own children, right? So I think that, as we head to a silver economy, I think future education should involve the silver economy to bring in the value system back. How do we get, adopted grandparents and grandmothers or adopted uncles and aunties to interact with young people? Because it'll be good for them. There's lots of research that show that elderly people in care facilities, when young people are there, volunteers and all that, they actually do much better. And the young people also gain a lot. So I think it must be systems thinking. 1, 2, and 3 is systems thinking. Because once you understand systems thinking, the science and all that will follow. And then the other one, of course, is values. Yeah. I hope you agree. Yep. Anybody else? Yes. Just shout. I can hear. If you don't have a microphone. But I want to come to UPM. I want to learn a bit more about permaculture.
Hai, Assalamualaikum.
Salam.
Saya Mastura.
Yeah.
Sebenarnya saya tak patut berada kat sini pun, cuma saya ikut saya punya lecturer saya. Saya berminatlah dengan topik ni. Cuma saya kat sini mewakili entrepreneurs sebab saya alumni UPM.
Yep.
Kita dalam industri, penggunaan plastik memang sangat heavy. Kalau kita tengok macam Zeus kan, dia cuba implement straw yang boleh dinyah, boleh di-destroy lah. So dalam industri, walaupun penekanan secara individual untuk tolak plastik and everything, tapi dalam industri tak macam tu. Bila kita pergi ke kilang untuk order plastik, kita boleh tengok berkontainer-kontainer lori membawa masuk pelbagai jenis plastik, packaging dan sebagainya. Sebab murah. Jadi bila kita nak sebagai dalam industri ni, bila kita nak convert kepada benda yang boleh di-destroy, dia mahal. Jadi dari situ macam saya punya concern lah, mungkin saya cuba nak memahami tentang situasi ni. Bagaimana kami ni sebagai entrepreneur yang kecil ni, SME, untuk membuat penukaran penggunaan ni. Dan bila kita tengok dalam industri pun, kalau kita cuba untuk tukar ke paper, dia lebih mahal. Tapi polisi untuk supply plastik ni heavy. Dia siap ada pelbagai jenis packaging yang lagi menarik yang buat kita nak.
Okay, saya faham.
So,
soalan you basically, kalau plastik tu murah, tak ada alternatif yang murah, I sebagai seorang entrepreneur, small medium enterprise, I macam mana? I pun nak buat business juga. Okay, masalahnya begini. Plastik ni memang tak bagus lah. Tapi ada plastik yang lebih bagus daripada some plastik. Masalahnya is still the fossil industry. Lobby very, very hard. Malaysia actually didn't sign the plastic treaty. I'm embarrassed. Sebab the lobby from the private, these businesses to actually not sign. What we want to know is what is in your plastic. There are more than 2,000 chemicals in the plastic. Some very, very harmful to health. Tapi dia tak nak beritahu. So that's number one. That one you kena tahulah. Number 2. Inovasi itu penting. Jadi di sinilah peranan inovasi untuk mengeluarkan produk-produk yang lebih selamat, yang boleh digunakan, dan bila ada demand, harga akan turun. Demand tak ada sebab orang semua tak kisah. Kan? Orang tak tahu pun. Macam masalah mikroplastik ni, orang tak tahu. Kalau I cakap dengan you, kesuburan kita drop sebab mikroplastik. Ramai orang kena asyik. Kalau you doktor, you buat infertility, memang you kaya. Sebab ramai betul yang tak boleh pregnant. Ini bukan sebab problem dia sebenarnya masalah of plastic pollution dan air pollution. Jadi itu satu dia. Cancer yang ramai lagi yang muda yang mengidap daripada cancer. Orang tak tahu that sebenarnya ada link dengan microplastic dengan pollution. Jadi the onus is number one, innovation kena ramp up. Number dua, kena ada regulation. At the end of the day, kalau tak ada regulasi, benda tak akan berlaku. I cakap to I may be in echo chamber here. I cakap dengan orang yang betul-betul prihatin kat sini. Kalau I cakap dengan separuh kat luar tu, mereka kata, sudahlah. Apalah bising doktor ni, dia kata. Kan? Saya nak kaya, saya tak nak peduli apa semua. Tapi this is where regulation comes in. Maknanya kerajaan kena prihatin bahawa in the long term, banyak masalah kesihatan yang akan melibatkan kos yang amat tinggi dari segi kesihatan, terutamanya di hospital-hospital yang bukan swasta. Dan ini ada kos dia. So everything ada kos. So I think this is where kita kena two-prong approach lah. Satu, inovasi keluarkan barang itu. Nombor dua, regulation yang bagus. Dan nombor tiga, kita kena tengok how to help small medium enterprise leapfrog into innovative business. I bagi you contoh. Free the Seed. You pernah dengar tak company Free the Seed? Free the Seed ni dia pakai hampas padi, jerami. Dia buat macam-macam. They now got a contract with Boeing, And this is like unicorn. Okay? The Indonesia e-fisheries. Have you heard e-fisheries? It's a multi-billion-dollar project now, di mana they use digital technology, cut off the middleman, look at sustainability, better fishing products, then everybody benefit. Community benefit, dapat kerja, cut down the middleman, the profit improve dan sebagainya. So, bagaimana kita nak small medium enterprise juga, we support small medium enterprise on much more innovative business yang actually involve sustainability. Sebab it's a growing field. So kalau you ada innovation, you akan lebih maju lebih cepat lah. Tapi kita tahu inovasi ni ada risiko. Kalau you kata I nak innovate tapi tak ada risk, tak ada punya. 10 kali you buat, sekali je you succeed. So, di sinilah dana untuk inovasi itu penting. If I have one request from the government, I would say put more money into research. Korea dulu, dia punya ekonomi lebih rendah daripada Malaysia. Sekarang dia lebih tinggi. One of the richest countries in the world. Why? Sebab government put so much money into research and development, into universities, into education. If you don't innovate, you don't research, how? You can no longer be competitive. So, banyak steps lah yang perlu. Saya faham. Anak saya kerja kat Zeus. Tiap-tiap hari saya marah dia. Saya cakap dia, ni plastik sini, plastik sana kan. So saya beritahu my favorite coffee shop is in London called Monmouth Coffee. Kalau you pergi dekat Covent Garden. Kalau you pergi Monmouth Coffee, dia tak ada pun take away cup. You bayar £5, you dapat very nice cup. It's macam porcelain, something like that. With it's probably synthetic lah, tapi not plastic lah, 100%. Then a rubber cap. You habis minum, dia bagi dia balik, dia bagi you £5 balik. Tapi I suka cup tu, I simpan. So I pergi mana-mana, I bawa cup, I bagi ke kedai kopi, dia bawa kopi, I bagi balik. It's lifestyle. It's habit. How do you make it a habit? How do you create demand for sustainable goods? Itu yang tu. Some sustainable goods are so expensive, you pay premium. Tapi some of the top businesses, Patagonia, all these products kan, baju and all that. So some greenwashing lah, tapi yang genuine punya sustainable product sangat tinggi costnya. So di mana, macam mana kita nak change mindset also of small medium enterprise to also innovate. Maknanya take a little bit of risk, provide incentive for them to take some risk, support them in the innovation journey untuk mengeluarkan produk-produk yang lebih lestari. I think our time is up. Yeah, I have to pick up my grandson. Okay, terima kasih.
Majlis merakamkan setinggi-tinggi penghargaan dan terima kasih kepada Yang Berbahagia Profesor Tan Sri Dr. Jemilah Mahmood di atas penyampaian syarahan dan juga sesi soal jawab sebentar tadi. Majlis ingin menjemput Yang Berbahagia Profesor Insinyur Dr. Abdul Rahim Abu Talib, Timbalan Naib Canselor Akademik dan Antarabangsa, diiringi Yang Berusaha Profesor Madya Teknologis Dr. Wan Zuhaini Saad, Pengarah Pusat Pembangunan dan Kecemerlangan Kepemimpinan Akademik, dan juga Yang Berbahagia Profesor Jemilah Presiden YBhg untuk pentas bagi menyempurnakan penyampaian cita hati kepada country. Memandangkan Yang Berbahagia marilah kita bersama-sama bergambar sebagai tanda kenang-kenangan. Untuk semua pemerhati masih kekal dalam Dewan untuk sesi seterusnya. Jangan ambil anak nanti. Sampai 20. 20 ni 45 dah start. Saya tak ada anak kecil. Para hadirin yang dihormati sekalian, kita akan teruskan dengan Majlis Penutup Bulan Akademia Putra UPM 2025. Majlis dimudahkan dengan penyampaian sijil penghargaan kepada pegawai-pegawai akademik yang telah memberi sumbangan cemerlang kepada CADe-Lead sama ada sebagai fasilitator, penceramah, penyelaras program atau ahli jawatankuasa yang aktif menyokong inisiatif pembangunan dan kecemerlangan kepemimpinan akademik di universiti. Sumbangan para pegawai akademik bukan sahaja memperkaya kandungan program latihan dan pembangunan kepemimpinan akademik, tetapi turut menjadi pemangkin kepada budaya ilmu, inovasi dan kolaborasi yang semakin subur di Universiti Putra Malaysia. Kecemerlangan CADe-Lead hari ini tidak mungkin tercapai tanpa sokongan padu daripada tenaga akademik yang komited dan berjiwa besar seperti tuan-tuan dan puan-puan. Para hadirin sekalian, bagi menyempurnakan penyampaian sijil penghargaan ini, majlis dengan segala hormatnya menjemput Yang Berbahagia Profesor Insinyur Dr. Rahim Abu Talib, Timbalan Naib Canselor, Akademik dan Antarabangsa, diiringi oleh Yang Berusaha Profesor Madya Majlis Suhaini Sahat, Pengarah Pusat Bangunan dan Kecemerlangan Kepemimpinan Akademik CADe-Lead UPM, dan juga Yang Berbahagia Profesor Jemilah Abu, Presiden UPM. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, dijemput Profesor Madya Dr. Suryana Sabri dari Fakulti Bioteknologi dan Sains Biomolekul. Terusnya, Profesor Madya Dr. Jemilah Zakaria dari Pusat Kualiti dan Pusat Kajian Pendidikan. Dijemput Profesor Madya Dr. Rahmat Japari dari Fakulti Perubatan dan Sains Kesihatan. Juga Dr. Rafidah Hod dari Fakulti Perubatan dan Sains Kesihatan. Seterusnya dijemput Dr. Muhammad Norfi Shah Muhammad Nasir dari Fakulti Sains. Dijemput Dr. Siri Mastura Malaysia dijemput Profesor Dr. Muhammad Saiful Bahri Yusuf dari Fakulti Perubatan dan Sains Kesihatan. Seterusnya dijemput Dr. Wan Muhammad Syazwan Wan Salahuddin dari Fakulti Sains. Seterusnya dijemput Dr. Safura Salihan dari Fakulti Perubatan dan Sains Kesihatan. Juga dari Fakulti Perubatan dan Sains Kesihatan dijemput Profesor Madya Dr. Zulfikri Azwan Makdaud. Seterusnya dijemput Dr. Nadia Akmal Baharum dari Fakulti Bioteknologi dan Sains Biomolekul. dijemput Profesor Madya Dr. Martini Muhammad Yusof dari Fakulti Pertanian. Seterusnya dijemput Profesor Madya Dr. Zita Radiah Said dari Fakulti Pengajian Pendidikan. Dijemput yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Jemilah Abu dari Fakulti Perubatan Veterina. Seterusnya dijemput Profesor Dr. Muhammad Sharif Abdul Talib dari Fakulti Sains dan Teknologi Makanan. Seterusnya dijemput Dr. Aini Marina Ma'ruf dari Fakulti Pengajian Pendidikan. Seterusnya dijemput Profesor Dr. Barakatul Nisa Muhammad Yusof dari Fakulti Perubatan dan Sains Kesihatan. Dijemput Profesor Madya Dr. Kelly Wong Tai Seng dari Fakulti Pertanian. Seterusnya Dr. Alif Dalilo Sulaiman dari Fakulti Kejuruteraan. Seterusnya Dr. Rozaini Abdullah dari Fakulti Perubatan dan Sains Kesihatan. Dijemput Profesor Madya Dr. Suryat Faiman dari Fakulti Sains. Seterusnya Dr. Irina Harun dari Fakulti Perhutanan dan Alam Sekitar. Dijemput Dr. Azrina Muhammad Aziz, Fakulti Bioteknologi dan Sains Molekul. Seterusnya Dr. Muhammad Ali Rizwan Abdullah dari Fakulti Bahasa Moden dan Komunikasi. Dijemput Dr. Chen Hui Yi dari Fakulti Sains. Dijemput Dr. Marsli Muhammad Mokhtar dari Fakulti Pengajian Pendidikan. Seterusnya Dr. Ahmad Nasir Muhammad Yusof dari Fakulti Ekologi Manusia. Dijemput Dr. Jasmine Arif Shah dari Fakulti Pertanian. Seterusnya dijemput Dr. Nuryanani Ibrahim dari Fakulti Kejuruteraan. Seterusnya, ini kumpulan yang paling besar, saya jemput ketuanya Dr. Mus'ab Abdul Razak dari Fakulti Kejuruteraan. Seterusnya Dr. Nurul Hanisa Johari dan tim beliau. Saya jemput Dr. Nurul Hanisa Johari dari Fakulti Sains dan Teknologi Makanan. Seterusnya jemput Professional Land Consultant, Geospatialist, Technologist Dr. Muhammad Mujahid Hassan dari Pusat Antarabangsa, Fakulti Ekologi Malaysia. Seterusnya Dr. Nur Jalilah Jumaan dari Fakulti Perhutanan dan Alam Sekitar. Dijemput Dr. Sarah Abdul Karim Saleh dari Fakulti Rega Perut dan Serdang. Seterusnya Dr. Awang Hazmi Awang Junaidi dari Fakulti Perubatan Veterinar. Dijemput Dr. Muhammad Zulfazli Muhammad Sobri dari Fakulti Bioteknologi dan Sains Biomolekul. Seterusnya dijemput Dr. Nurmalia Samian dari Fakulti Sains Komputer dan Teknologi Maklumat. Dijemput Dr. Mazliana Ahmad Kamarudin dari Fakulti Sains. Seterusnya dijemput Profesor Madya Dr. Intan Jemilah Abdul Razak dari Fakulti Perubatan Veterinar. Dijemput pula Dr. Siri Khadijah Ajang dari Fakulti Perubatan dan Sains Kesihatan. Seterusnya dijemput Dr. Nur Aira Abdul Rahim dari Fakulti Pengajian Pendidikan. Dijemput Profesor Madya Dr. Nurmi Yahya dari Fakulti Bioteknologi dan Sains Biomolekul. Seterusnya dijemput Profesor Madya Dr. Amir Hamzah Syarahan dari Fakulti Perhutanan dan Alam Sekitar. Dijemput Profesor Madya Dr. Firdaus Elias Firdaus Muhammad Yusuf dari Fakulti Perhutanan dan Alam Sekitar. Seterusnya Profesor Teknologi Dr. Zurina Zainal Abidin dari Fakulti Kejuruteraan. Dijemput tidak lain dan tidak bukan Dr. Maraj Sri Shima dari Fakulti Perubatan dan Sains Kesihatan. Dijemput Datuk Profesor Dr. Syamala anak perempuan K. Subramaniam dari Fakulti Sains Komputer dan Teknologi Maklumat. Dipersilakan Profesor Madya Dr. Farah Abdul Bacit Ishak dari Fakulti Sains dan Teknologi Makanan. Dijemput Cik Puspa anak perempuan Sri Kemaran dari Pusat Pemajuan Kompetensi Bahasa. Seterusnya Dr. Ahmad Salahuddin Muhammad Harifuddin dari Fakulti Kejuruteraan. Dipersilakan Profesor Madya Dr. Muhammad Mokrish Manhaja dari Fakulti Perubatan Veterina. Dan yang terakhir adalah Profesor Emeritus Dr. Mat Nasir Syamsuddin dari Putra Business School. Terima kasih diucapkan kepada semua penerima sumbangan yang amat bermakna kepada CADe dan universiti secara keseluruhannya. Seterusnya tibalah masa yang dinanti-nantikan penyampaian hadiah bagi pertandingan amalan terbaik inovasi pengajaran dan pembelajaran antara PTJ UPM Putra Pintar 2025 yang merupakan acara kemuncak sempena Bulan Akademia Putra UPM 2025. Putra Pintar merupakan platform strategik untuk menonjolkan usaha pensyarah dalam menghasilkan kaedah pengajaran dan pembelajaran yang inovatif, lestari dan berimpak tinggi. Pertandingan ini bukan sahaja menjadi medan penghargaan kepada bakat dan usaha pensyarah, malah berfungsi sebagai wahana perkongsian ilmu serta amalan terbaik yang dapat memperkayakan budaya akademia di UPM. Ia juga selaras dengan aspirasi universiti untuk mengangkat akademia yang dinamik dan lestari sebagai tonggak kecemerlangan dalam pendidikan tinggi. Dalam usaha mengenal pasti pegawai akademik UPM yang berpotensi untuk dicalonkan sebagai peserta dalam anugerah fellowship Naib Canselor AFNC serta seterusnya calon anugerah akademik negara AAN, maka Putra Pintar merupakan medan memupuk dalam usaha pencarian bakat ini. Kita mulakan dengan kategori individu. Sebelum kita meneruskan dengan penyampaian hadiah utama, majlis ingin memberikan pengiktirafan khas, special mention kepada Dr. Shazrul Ekmar Abdul Razak dari Fakulti Pertanian. Tahniah diucapkan. Seterusnya hadirin dan hadirat sekalian, pemenang tempat ketiga akan menerima sijil dan wang tunai berjumlah RM250. Tempat ketiga dimenangi oleh Dr. Nadia Akmal
Baharum dari Fakulti Teknologi dan Sains Biomolekul dengan tajuk INSPIRE
Inspire Framework, Active Strategies to Understand and Support Diverse Learners. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, pemenang tempat kedua pula akan menerima sijil dan wang tunai berjumlah RM500. Tempat kedua dimenangi oleh Profesor Madya Dr. Jayanti
dari Fakulti Sains dengan tajuk Rhinostat, Elevated Visualization and AI-Powered
Interactive Data Analysis instead of just Rhinostat. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, Johan bagi kategori individu akan menerima sijil dan wang tunai berjumlah RM750. Johan bagi kategori individu Putra Pintar UPM 2025 jatuh pada Profesor Madya Dr. Amir
Syarahan dari Fakulti Perhutanan dan Alam Sekitar dengan tajuk Community Adaptation Challenge. Tahniah diucapkan.
Tahniah diucapkan kepada semua pemenang kategori individu. Sekali lagi tahniah diucapkan kepada semua pemenang individu. Kategori individu, maaf. Seterusnya bagi kategori berkumpulan. Pemenang tempat ketiga akan menerima sijil dan wang tunai berjumlah RM750. Tempat ketiga dimenangi oleh tim Dr. Elisa Azura binti Azman dari Fakulti Pertanian dengan tajuk Student Learn and Share Through Food Portfolio. Persilakan. Jika ahli juga hadir pada hari ini, dijemput untuk bersama-sama dengan Dr. Elisa di pentas. Pemenang tempat kedua pula akan menerima sijil dan wang tunai berjumlah RM1,000. Tempat kedua dimenangi oleh tim Dr. Mus'ab Abdul Razak dari Fakulti Kejuruteraan dengan tajuk Innovative Curriculum for Safer Industries, Master in Process Safety and Loss Prevention. Dipersilakan ahli kumpulan juga turut serta. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, Johan bagi kategori berkumpulan akan menerima sijil dan wang tunai berjumlah RM2,000. Johan bagi kategori berkumpulan Putra Pintar UPM 2025 jatuh kepada Teknologis Dr. Rosie Nurhaizan binti Nur dan Dr. Syafina binti Kamantin dari Fakulti Sains Komputer dan Teknologi Maklumat dengan tajuk Amalan Pengajaran Inovatif Projek Usahawan Digital Kecerdasan Industri TEDI CADe. Tahniah diucapkan kepada semua pemenang kategori individu dan perkumpulan. Majlis merakamkan setinggi-tinggi penghargaan dan terima kasih kepada Yang Berbahagia Profesor Insinyur Dr. Abdul Rahim Abu Talib di atas penyampaian hadiah itu tadi. Tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, marilah kita bersama-sama menoleh kembali kepada perjalanan inspirasi yang telah kita lalui sepanjang Bulan Akademia Putra UPM 2025. Daripada pelbagai inisiatif dan program yang memperkasa kecemerlangan akademik, perkongsian ilmu yang bernilai, hinggalah kepada semangat para pendidik yang sentiasa berusaha mencipta impak melalui pendidikan, semuanya mencerminkan keunggulan dan dedikasi warga universiti dalam menjulang martabat ilmu. Sekarang, marilah kita sama-sama menonton tayangan video khas yang memaparkan sorotan sepanjang Bulan Akademia Putra UPM 2025, bulan yang penuh dengan semangat keilmuan, kreativiti dan kecemerlangan warga akademia kita.
Dengan penuh takzim Rahim, saya dengan ini melancarkan Bulan Akademia Putra 2025.
Seterusnya, Majlis dengan segala hormatnya menjemput Yang Berbahagia Profesor Insinyur Dr. Rahim Abu Talib, Timbalan Naib Canselor Akademik dan Antarabangsa untuk menyampaikan ucapan penutup Bulan Akademia Putra UPM 2025. Dipersilakan.
Terima kasih pengurusi majlis. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi syrahli sadri wa yassirli amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Yang berusaha Profesor Madya Teknologis Dr. Wan Zuhaini Saad, Pengarah Pusat Pembangunan Kecemerlangan dan Kepimpinan Akademik CADe-Lead. Yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Jemilah Abu, Presiden Persatuan Pegawai Akademik Universiti Putra Malaysia, Ahli Jawatankuasa Pengurusan UPM, Pegawai-pegawai kanan UPM, seterusnya tuan-tuan dan puan-puan hadirin yang dikasihi. Alhamdulillah, syukur kita kepada Allah SWT kerana dapat kita berkumpul pada petang hari yang sungguh indah ini setelah kita mendengar syarahan Tan Sri Jemilah sebentar tadi. Saya yakin tuan-tuan dan puan-puan yang berada di sini masih lagi teruja dan terpaut dengan apa yang telah disampaikan oleh Tan Sri sebentar tadi. Dan sepanjang bulan ini, saya dimaklumkan oleh pengarah yang telah berusaha bersama pasukannya, kita telah berjaya melaksanakan lebih daripada 23 aktiviti ilmiah sepanjang bulan akademia pada tahun 2025. Syabas diucapkan. Dan kita telah menganjurkan pelbagai program dan aktiviti dari segi pertandingan, dari segi perkongsian intelektual dan seperti podcast, wacana ilmiah, perkongsian kepakaran dan yang paling utama syarahan tokoh terkemuka yang telah kita dengar sebentar tadi dan sebelum ini yang bahagia Prof Datuk Seri Zaini Ujang, sehinggalah ke muncaknya, iaitu kita telah mengadakan pertandingan amalan terbaik inovasi pengajaran dan pembelajaran atau lebih dikenali sebagai Putra Pintar. Saya ingin merakamkan setinggi-tinggi penghargaan dan ucapan terima kasih kepada Jawatankuasa Induk Bulan Akademia Putra 2025 di bawah pimpinan CADe-Lead dengan kerjasama Persatuan Pegawai Akademik UPM yang saban tahun tidak kenal lelah secara konsisten dapat menjayakan program dengan penuh iltizam dan juga bersemangat. Ucapan terima kasih juga kepada rakan-rakan akademik yang masih berada di sini. Memang saya tahu semua datang sebab nak dapat sijil dan dapat penghargaan daripada Bulan Akademia Putra. Apa-apa pun ini mencerminkan komitmen semua dalam menjadikan program kita ni sebagai medan kerjasama dan semangat kebersamaan seluruh warga UPM. Tahun ini kita telah mengangkat tema Akademia Dinamik Memacu Inovasi Lestari. Tema ini sebati dengan manifestasi kecemerlangan akademik yang mencerminkan hala tuju UPM, sebuah universiti penyelidikan bertaraf dunia dengan semangat yang kita selalu dokong, iaitu berilmu berbakti. Akademia Dinamik menuntut kita sebagai ahli akademia supaya tangkas, adaptif dan terbuka terhadap perubahan yang pantas. Dunia pendidikan kita sedang berdepan anjakan mengaplikasikan digital dan teknologi dalam pengajaran dan juga pembelajaran. Penerokaan dalam kecerdasan buatan AI boleh mencorakkan dunia akademik agar tidak terikat dengan kaedah dan cara kita yang konvensional. Inovasi pula bukan hanya tentang teknologi atau ciptaan, tetapi juga tentang daya tahan, keseimbangan dan juga nilai kemanusiaan. Inovasi lestari adalah inovasi yang boleh membawa kebaikan kepada alam, kepada masyarakat dan yang paling utama kepada masa depan. Inovasi yang dimaksudkan mestilah berakar kepada nilai-nilai ilmu, etika dan juga memberi manfaat. Peranan seorang akademia melangkaui pelaksanaan kuliah dan penerbitan jurnal ilmiah semata-mata. Akademia adalah pembentuk nilai, pemikir yang mencabar status quo, penyelesai kepada masalah. Dalam meneroka maklumat di alam digital pesat ini, peranan para akademia melangkaui fakta dan tafsiran pembeza ilmu dan ilusi, yang mana kita boleh membezakan sesuatu maklumat berbanding dengan ilmu. UPM tidak akan berada pada tahap kita pada hari ini tanpa tenaga akademik yang berdedikasi dan juga komited, dan pengorbanan masa tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, pengorbanan tenaga, fikiran adalah demi memastikan ilmu adalah terus subur di universiti yang kita cinta ini. Warisan ilmu yang diperturunkan tetap akan mekar dan hidup dalam setiap graduan yang akan melangkah keluar dari menara ilmu di UPM. Dalam arus globalisasi dan era AI, dunia menantikan suara intelektual dan bukan sahaja bijak menganalisis tetapi juga berani menzahirkan kebenaran dan nilai kemanusiaan. Inilah masa untuk warga akademia di UPM muncul sebagai ejen transformasi bukan sahaja di dalam kampus tetapi juga untuk masyarakat sejagat. Sebagai Timbalan Naib Canselor Akademik Antarabangsa, saya melihat setiap ahli akademik di UPM bertanggungjawab sebagai ejen perubahan yang mempunyai kekuatan dan juga kelebihan tersendiri. Untuk apa? Untuk membentuk masa depan universiti. Kita bukan sekadar sebagai pengamal ilmu tetapi kepada penggerak transformasi. Tuan-tuan dan hadirin, kita tidak boleh berpuas hati dalam menyempurnakan tanggungjawab menyampai ilmu semata-mata. Akademia hari ini perlu menjana idea, memperbaharui pendekatan dan membina jaringan strategik. Setiap kursus yang kita ajar, setiap pelajar yang kita bimbing dan setiap hasil penyelidikan yang berimpak menjadi pemangkin mengukuhkan lanskap pendidikan sosial, ekonomi dan juga budaya. Ketika kemasukan pelajar tahun baru, sesi ini 25-26, saya ada menegaskan betapa pentingnya adab dahulu baru ilmu. Mungkin di antara para dekan dan tuan-tuan dapat hadir pada waktu tersebut, saya menekankan aspek adab dahulu baru ilmu. Ini adalah penting untuk kita mengajar para pelajar kita berkaitan dengan adab, kemudian barulah mereka boleh mendapat ilmu yang kita kongsi. Tiada gunanya ilmu tanpa adab. Akademia berjiwa insan ialah mereka yang mengajar dengan hikmah, berkarya dengan jujur dan memperbetulkan niat untuk mencapai kesejahteraan yang hakiki. UPM telah melalui pelbagai inisiatif pembangunan bakat, termasuklah program kepimpinan akademik, bimbingan mentor-mentee, latihan pedagogi berimpak tinggi serta program pembangunan profesional berterusan berperanan memperkukuh keupayaan warga akademik untuk terus berkembang seiring dengan perubahan zaman. Kita ingin membentuk akademia yang berjiwa besar yang melihat tanggungjawabnya bukan sekadar mengajar tetapi membangunkan potensi manusia bagi negara dan juga dunia sejajar dengan matlamat Pelan Pendidikan Tinggi Malaysia 2026-2030 iaitu melahirkan pembina negara berpaksikan kemanusiaan di pacu matlamat. Apabila seorang akademia berkembang, bukan bermaksud kita physically berkembang, universiti kita juga akan berkembang. Dan apabila universiti kita berkembang, maka masyarakat juga turut akan menerima manfaatnya, insya-Allah. Oleh itu saya menyuruh rakan-rakan akademia semua agar kita terus sama-sama menyokong agenda pembangunan bakat akademik sebagai teras kepada kecemerlangan universiti. Ini adalah pelaburan jangka masa panjang dalam pelaburan manusia yang akan mencipta masa depan. UPM kini sedang menuju ke arah merangka pelan strategi yang baharu iaitu UPM 2026-2030 yang akan menumpukan kepada 4 teras utama iaitu keterjaminan makanan, kesihatan planet dan kelestarian, kebajikan dan pengembangan warga dan satu lagi adalah kesohoran global. Dalam kerangka ini, pembangunan akademia akan kekal menjadi tunjang utama agar setiap inisiatif strategik dapat digerakkan oleh insan yang berilmu, berakhlak dan juga berwawasan. Saya juga ingin mengambil kesempatan untuk mengucapkan tahniah kepada semua penerima sijil penghargaan pada petang ini dan apresiasi yang telah menyumbang dalam menyokong inisiatif yang dibangunkan oleh pihak CADe-Lead, juga kepada para pemenang pertandingan amalan terbaik inovasi pengajaran dan pembelajaran antara PTJ UPM Putra Pintar 2025. Anda adalah inspirasi kepada akademia di UPM. Tidak lupa juga, baru-baru ini kita telah mendapat satu berita yang amat baik. 2 pensyarah kita daripada UPM telah mengharumkan nama universiti apabila dinobatkan sebagai penerima anugerah akademik negara. Mungkin boleh bangun Dr. Manraj dan Dr. Rahimah. Okey. Dr. Rahimah di belakang sana. Okey. Tahniah kepada Dr. Rahimah Jamaluddin dari Fakulti Pengajian Pendidikan FPP yang telah menerima anugerah pengajaran kategori kelompok sastra gunaan dan sains sosial gunaan, manakala Dr. Manraj Singh Chima dari Fakulti Perubatan dan Sains Kesihatan telah menerima anugerah pengajaran kelompok sains kesihatan. Syabas sekali lagi. Penghargaan dan terima kasih yang tiada terhingga saya rakamkan juga kepada pihak CADe-Lead UPM yang saban tahun memastikan pengisian Bulan Akademia sentiasa segar dan menarik. Sebelum bermula majlis saya tanya Prof. Madya Dr. Wan Zuhaini, berapa banyak aktiviti kita telah laksana. Beliau kata tak terkira banyaknya. Saya kata please count. So ada 23 sebenarnya. Dan syabas diucapkan. Okay. So hadirin sekalian, Bulan Akademia Putra bukanlah titik noktah perjuangan kita sebagai ahli akademik. Sebaliknya menjadi pemangkin kepada semangat perjuangan ilmu yang tidak pernah luntur. Inovasi yang berimpak adalah ciptaan yang dapat menyentuh sanubari manusia dan melestarikan kehidupan. Dengan itu, saya menutup Bulan Akademia Putra 2025. Sekian wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Pihak majlis merakamkan ucapan terima kasih kepada Yang Berbahagia Timbalan Naib Canselor, Akademik dan Antarabangsa di atas ucapan penutup Bulan Akademia Putra UPM 2025 sebentar tadi. Hadirin sekalian, majlis pada petang ini diteruskan lagi dengan sebuah persembahan khas yang akan disampaikan oleh Yang Berusaha Dr. Muhammad Ashraf Cik Ahmad, Ketua Jabatan Pendidikan Kaunselor dan Psikologi Counselling, Fakulti Pengajian Pendidikan UPM. Beliau akan mendeklamasikan sebuah sajak yang bertajuk Tawarikh Terindah. Untuk makluman para hadirin, Yang Berusaha Dr. Muhammad Ashraf Cik Ahmad merupakan Johan Sayembara Puisi Merdeka 2025 UPM, anjuran Pusat Kebudayaan dan Kesenian Sultan Salahuddin Abdul Aziz Shah UPM baru-baru ini. Persembahan pada petang ini juga turut diiringi dengan alunan muzik gambus oleh Encik Muhammad Haris Akasha Muhammad Rezwa Adli dari Pusat Kebudayaan dan Kesenian Sultan Salahuddin Abdul Aziz Shah UPM. Majlis dengan segala hormatnya mempersilakan.
Terima kasih. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Pada petang ini